Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Monday, April 5th Board of Commissioners meeting. At 4:30, we had a work session on stormwater. And the first order of business is an invocation and pledge of allegiance. And we do not have anyone signed up to lead us in that. Is anyone from the audience care to lead us in that? If not, I'll go ahead and... Did you want to go? Do you want to come on up? Please, thank you, sir. Please do a pledge. Why don't you pledge allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Prayer. Go ahead.
All right, Lord Jesus, please bless everybody here. Hopefully everybody's safe tonight and for always in Currituck County. Definitely want to thank everybody for being here today. Everybody who's present here and on virtual. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Okay, the next item is the approval of the agenda. Do we have any changes, or can I get a motion for the approval? I have a motion for approval and a second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Agenda passes. The next item is public comment. Public comment is here for the public to speak on any items that the board will listen to without interrupting. I do not have anyone signed up for the public comment. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on public comment that's not related to a public hearing matter at this time? If so, please come forward. Okay, seeing none, I'll go ahead and close public comment. And the next item is our commissioner's report. And this evening, I'm going to go ahead and start off to my right to Commissioner Etheridge.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last Tuesday morning, myself and Commissioner Jarvis had the pleasure and privilege of attending the ribbon cutting on the new greenhouse that Currituck FFA now has. Very impressive facility, and I was very impressed with the students that were there. I did engage a couple of them and ask them why did they get involved in FFA. And it just spoke to the values that they feel like they get through what Missy Swain's doing out there. And the one thing that I learned last Tuesday that really spoke volumes about the program that Missy has out there is that out of 8,612 FFA chapters across our nation, Currituck ranks in the top 1%. And that's something we can all be proud of. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Etheridge. Commissioner McCord?
That was I was unable to attend. I wanted to attend that, but we had COVID clinics, which I'm in charge at the Sheriff's Department of staffing. So I was unable to attend, but I saw the pictures on Facebook. It looked pretty awesome, and I've seen the facility. It's very nice, and they do a great job in the county. As Commissioner Etheridge said, tomorrow, second round COVID shots. I say COVID like every commissioner's meeting and like every day. All we talk about is COVID. But now they've changed it. If you're getting your COVID shot, your first round, call the and Commissioner Payment, who's our chair for the Albemarle Regional Health Services. You can get them there. So the only kind of shots or clinics that are being held at the Y are second round. So if you come out tomorrow and you haven't had a shot yet, you're not going to get one. It's second round only. We'll probably have 3 or 4 more in the county, and then they'll be done. And then everything will be housed at the health department, and there's massive other places where you can get a shot if you want a shot. So, but tomorrow, second round only, 9 to 11 at the YMCA, and we'll see you there.
Thank you, Commissioner McCord. Vice Chair, Mr. Beaumont.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only thing that I'd like to bring up is tomorrow night is at 5 o'clock here is the next meeting of the Veterans Advisory Board. And we have a
visiting guest from Iredell County.
I already know close enough, yes.
Same thing. Who's coming in speaking about veterans issues, and I would encourage any of the veterans in the county. Actually, you don't even have to be a resident of Currituck County, but I'd appreciate a lot of good information is going to be presented tomorrow night. And if you're interested in Veterans Affairs, that would be a great meeting to attend. So again, tomorrow night at 5 o'clock in the boardroom. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Beaumont, and I'll just touch on a few things. I'm going to let the county manager touch base on a little bit more with the vaccine program and the current changes with that. But just wanted to say, Currituck has had a very successful, as is a lot of other, events throughout our county on Easter. I think the kids, from what I've heard and seen throughout our county, had a great time. Getting out and getting some exercise and just enjoying the outsides and getting from all cooped up in home for all this time with this COVID going on. So just thank you for everybody who did stuff for our kids out there this Easter, and I think it's showing its success. And then the fire departments, a lot of them had their fish fries this Friday. A lot of success there. Thank you for supporting them, and keep supporting your fire departments. The traffic started to pick up, as you can see. Accidents are going to be picking up. There's road construction going on the southern end of the highway, so be careful out there when you're traveling. Tourists are coming through there. It's just it's going to be a dangerous time here coming up. So the fire department's ready. Support them all you can. Get involved. And with that, that's all I have for now. The Commissioner White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So an interesting email came through today. Yahoo Finance has us as the third most searched destination right now for vacations. It's probably no surprise to anyone on the Outer Banks because of the number of people that are there right now. It is positively packed at this moment. We did get beat out by Yellowstone, although they have Kevin Costner for their show. So I'm not sure we can compete with that. And Disney owns their own network, so those two beat us out. So I think we're in pretty good company.
But we're tied with Disney. I thought it was $1 billion and $1 billion each.
Well, there's probably a little tick in there somewhere that they gave
about
a
a
little
mouse.
nod.
About a mouse difference.
Right, about a mouse ear's difference. This past weekend, I had an opportunity to do a Zoom meeting with the Wellhead Property Owners Association. It was a great meeting with them. Just kind of filled them on what was going on with the county. That is it's a non-commitment organization, so they have quite a few members. It's pretty impressive how many people are involved in that. If there's anybody from Wellhead that is watching this, you should get involved in it. They're not there to be a normal HOA. They are there to deal with the drainage issues. They want to see traffic movement better through the neighborhood, things that improve your quality of life in Wellhead versus getting into the nuance of a regular POA. So I would encourage anyone to join that POA. And if there's any others out there that are doing Zoom meetings, if I'm available, I'm happy to chime in on those. Commissioner Beaumont usually goes to the Wellhead Property Owners as he owns property over there. But so he's tied in the crawl as well, and I'm sure he'd be happy to make himself available if he's available. If I am not, so I'm putting him on the spot. But feel free to reach out to me through my county email or my telephone, which is listed on the county website. That's it for me.
Thank you, Commissioner White. Commissioner Etheridge? Wow. Thank you, Commissioner Etheridge. And Commissioner Jarvis.
Thank you. Just like Commissioner Etheridge said, he and I both attended the ribbon cutting on April 1st, and it is an incredible facility. As someone who grew up working in the garden on my family farm, it is an extraordinary facility. And it will be a fabulous component to the great agricultural education program that we have. As I talked to Missy Swain, who is one of our extraordinary agricultural education teachers, she told me that they have over 300 students enrolled in one of the many ag ed programs that they have, such as horticulture, as well as animal husbandry. And it is just an incredible facility that will help us preserve our past and, of course, map out a great future with the ag industries that are so important to this area. One of the highlights was seeing two of my former students. This group of seniors is the last group of kids that I taught all day long, and I taught all sophomores that year. And two of my students, Emma and Lauren, they were there, and they both have committed to prestigious universities to continue their studies next year. And I wish them the best, and I wish the program the best as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jarvis. Next is our county manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of things tonight. First of all, on the vaccines, the first vaccine, as Commissioner McCord was saying, is by appointment only going forward. That'll be done at Albemarle Regional Health Services. Second dose clinics are tomorrow, the 6th, from 9 to 11 at the YMCA at Maple Park. This is going to be for folks who got their first dose of the Moderna vaccine before March 11th. On April 7th, North Carolina is moving into a different group for vaccines. We will be moving into vaccines for anyone 16 and older. So that's a big change from what we've had. So I would encourage any residents that are still interested and who meet those new guidelines, reach out to ARHS. You can make an appointment through their website in order to get that first shot. Internally, we are started to get into the teeth of the budget process. The Board of Commissioners will hold their budget work sessions towards the end of the month, I believe April 29th and 30th. We'll be getting information out as we go along to prepare you all for those meetings. The county is also working on public outreach. We've started producing a couple of videos every month. So we had one on the Senior Center that came out. We'll have one that just came out recently on tax reevaluation that is going to feature heavily in the budget process. So I'd encourage any citizens out there. You can find that on Facebook or on our website. It gives a really good explanation in just 2 or 3 minutes on the tax reevaluation process. Also, we have some major construction projects that are ongoing. The Maritime Museum and the Public Safety Center are both scheduled to be opened sometime end of June into July. The Maritime Museum, we've got to get the exhibits ready. The structure is basically complete. We'll be opening those bathrooms under a temporary CO very shortly so that as we get into the tourist season, you can use the new restrooms over there. Everybody that's gone in there that used the old one says it's quite an upgrade. We've got air conditioning and heat in there, which everybody's pretty excited about. The public safety building will be occupied sometime around the middle of July, and Shingle Landing Park, right now the rough time frame is sometime end of May, 1st of June, and that's based on some of the weather delays they've had out there. If you've been by the park recently, you can see playgrounds coming up. You can see now we're starting to see some vertical development. It's really exciting. That's all I have this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Stikelether. And the next item on the agenda is public hearings. And the first item we have is a continuation of PB 20-24 Shingle Landing Villas, request for a preliminary plat use permit for multifamily subdivision townhouse development located on Moyock Landing Drive, tax map 9, parcel 29T, Moyock Township. And I would ask at this time if there's anyone who is to provide testimony regarding this who had not been affirmed at the last meeting. Would you please stand up to be affirmed? Okay, if you could raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony that you will be presenting tonight is the truth and the whole truth and nothing but the truth? All right, thank you. You may be seated. And I guess we left this off with the applicant.
Good evening, Commissioners. Is it all right if I take my mask off?
Yes, sir.
I've had both my shots. Thank you. Me too. Good, yeah. Thank you for this opportunity. I am John Morrison. I'm a member of the Currituck Bar and the Twyford Law Firm. I am representing Shingle Landing Villas, LLC. I obviously was not present last time. My understanding from conferring with the county attorney and Mr. Miller is that the principal issue was you needed to have counsel to elicit expert testimony, so Mr. Miller would not be practicing law without a license. And in particular, the issue before you that you wanted resolved was whether or not the project as proposed would adversely affect land values of adjacent properties. Am I correct in my assumptions?
I believe that was one of the issues, yes, sir.
Okay, is there another issue I need to address, sir?
I believe that was all that this board asked for at the moment. Unless
Okay.
something
I
else
am
comes
ready
up,
to
yes.
proceed, and my first witness would be Mr. Kimberly Tate. If he would come forward. Do you wish him to sit in this chair or to stand adjacent to me?
If he could come up, please, to the mic and just restate his name and all that, please.
Also, I assume it's permissible for him to remove his mask as well.
It would be, yes. That's fine.
Thank you.
I've had one shot, next one comes
That's
tomorrow.
Would you, he has been sworn, would you give us your name, please, sir?
Tim Tate,
And where do you live, Mr. Tate?
1093 Water Lily Road, Currituck, North Carolina,
And how long have you lived there?
about 30 years.
And what is your occupation, sir?
A real estate appraiser,
And how long have you been so employed?
38 years.
And do you have a company name?
Tate Appraisal and Consultation Incorporated.
And where is your office located? I believe you said that, I'm sorry. Now, would you tell us, please, about your education? Did you take any degrees?
Graduated from Virginia Tech with a degree in urban planning and design, and also have the designations through the Appraisal Institute of SRA as a professional designation, and the RES through the International Association of Assessment Officers.
Now, sir, did you have to take any, do you have any licenses?
I carry a certified residential appraisal certification in North Carolina and Virginia.
And when did you get those licenses?
When licensing went into effect, I was actually appraising before licensing went into effect, which was like 1990, but I started in 1982.
And are you currently licensed to do appraisals in the Commonwealth of Virginia and the state of North Carolina?
Yes.
Approximately how many appraisals have you done in the course of your career?
25 to 30,000,
Approximately how many have you done in Currituck County?
15,000, 15 to 20,000.
All right, now, you have prepared my request of curriculum vitae, is that correct? If I may, I'd like to introduce this into the record, Madam Clerk.
Fine.
Thank you. All right, sir. If you would, please tell us, are you familiar with this subject property?
Yes.
And how did you become familiar with it?
I was approached by Mr. Miller to take a look at the project and take a look at the application, spent some time going over the application and the proposal, and actually did a field inspection, rode by and took a look at the property.
Are you familiar with the property adjacent to the proposed project?
Yes.
And would you describe just briefly what that is, please?
To the east, you have the Currituck House, which is an assisted living, memory loss care facility. To the west, you have a active railroad track and the US 158 north-south corridor. To the north, you have a wooded buffer area and then some residential development, which I believe is called Shady Oaks. To the south, you have some Shingle Landing Drive and some residential development, and there's also a couple of vacant commercial parcels that abut on the other side of the railroad track from the subject.
Now, are you familiar, based upon your experience, with what could adversely impact the value of real property, both commercial and residential, in terms of value?
Adverse adjacent uses that aren't in compliance or within harmony with what's already there. Something that would create an noxious or a toxic atmosphere adjacent to the subject property. Heavy traffic, heavy equipment.
All right. And have you appraised condominiums as well as townhomes?
I have.
And this particular project, the townhouse, of course, the owner would own real estate, would own dirt, so to speak, which is not normally the case in a condominium. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. But in terms of the structure and the occupancy and the design, since this project is limited to a footprint, that is, you only own the land that your walls sit on, right?
Correct.
Okay. Is there any difference in terms of the structure between a townhouse and a condominium in this project?
In this project, no.
Okay. Now, sir, based upon your training, your education, and your experience, do you have an opinion as to whether or not this project, if the application is granted, would have an adverse impact of any kind, including diminution in value on adjacent properties? Do you have an opinion?
I do.
And would you tell us what that opinion is?
From what I've reviewed with the project, the proposal, it appears that it's in harmony with the adjacent uses, that it would not have a negative impact on the adjacent properties, primarily because the adjacent properties are commercial. They're probably more intensely used than the subject is. So I can't imagine that they would have a negative impact on the adjacent properties that are already there.
All right, so your opinion is it would not have, your professional opinion is it would not have, and you've explained your basis for that.
Correct.
It would also serve as a buffer of some sort, you advised me earlier. Is that right? It could actually improve the quality.
I believe it serves as a buffer between the general shingle landing development and the highway, what will ultimately be commercial development along 158, 168 going in there. There's going to be commercial development all along that corridor, and that this will serve to buffer the development that's to the east of it away from that, as well as provide some buffering from the traffic from the highway, because it's 4 lanes. It's the primary north-south artery running in and out of Currituck. So anybody going into Currituck is pretty much going down that road.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chairman, at this time, I would submit the witness to questions from the board and board staff and council.
Does the board have any questions for this witness?
Nothing for me.
Staff? Everybody? Okay. I think we're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I understand from Mr. Miller there was some question about the reason for building townhomes as opposed to condominiums. I have an expert witness. If you're interested, I don't want to take up your time if it's not a concern to you, but it's easier to finance a townhome than it is a condominium, and therefore it makes housing more affordable in Currituck County. I'm not testifying. I can tell you what my witness would do if you want to hear from him. He's a banker.
Board, I think the board would like to hear from the
All
witness.
right. Would you come up, sir? Members of the board, this is Mr. Brandon W. Dixon. Would you give us your name? I've done it for you, but do it again.
Yep, Brandon Dixon,
And Mr. Dixon, where do you live?
2313 Valley Rio Way in Virginia Beach.
What is your occupation, sir?
Vice President of Sales and a Senior Loan Officer at Tidewater Mortgage.
So you're in the business of helping homeowners obtain mortgages, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And tell us where you took your degrees, please.
Yeah, I have a degree in business management from Penn State University. And
When did you take that degree?
2004.
And do you have any other degrees or specialized training?
Specialized training, we're required to take 20 hours of pre-licensing education before applying for any kind of state licensure. Also having to pass every state test for all the states that we're licensed in, as well as a national test.
And what state are you licensed? States are you licensed?
Currently licensed in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, North Carolina, Virginia.
All right, sir. And how long have you been engaged in this particular line of work?
18 years.
All right. And during the course of those 18 years, have you financed both or helped people obtain financing for the purchase of both condominium and townhomes?
Yes, sir.
Would you tell us, please, which is the more difficult to obtain financing for?
Definitely condos.
Why is that?
The whole project has different characteristics that needs to be reviewed to be able to meet agency guidelines. Townhomes.
You say agency guidelines. What agencies are you talking about?
Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Ginnie Mae, which is VA and FHA financing as well, and USDA.
Right. Give us an example of why that's more difficult. What
different characteristics. It depends on the entire project. We usually have to order a condo questionnaire to see what the investor concentration is in the total project. If there's any pending litigations, how many current owners are behind on their HOA dues, more than 10 to 15%. Requires the review of budgets, master insurance policies, things of that nature.
Are interest rates generally higher on condominiums?
Yes, they can have an add-on.
Okay. Now, this is because in order to obtain financing for a condominium, the bank, the prospective lender, has to review the entire condominium complex and its finances that are in play, its condition that is in play, and not simply the one property that the
Yes,
purchaser would
yeah,
want.
there are site condo approvals, but from, yes.
Okay. And I assume for this reason, rejection rates are higher in condominium applications than townhome applications.
That is correct.
All right. Now, I think we know, but just very briefly, tell us why it's easier to finance a townhouse.
A townhouse is considered just a regular single-family residence, whether it's in a PUD, a planned unit development that has HOA dues as well. Small HOA dues compared to a bigger condo. But those are pretty much the differences, is we treat a townhome like a single-family home.
All right, sir. Now, based on everything you just said, do you have an opinion from a financing perspective whether townhomes, such as a project in this, would be more accessible housing purchases for the residents of Currituck County than condominiums?
Yes, townhomes would be better for sure.
All right, thank you. At this time, I would submit this witness to any questions about the board, council, or staff.
I have one question. Who would be responsible for taking care of the building?
So with a townhome, it's actually the borrower or the owner that is required to take home or usually take care of the building. They have their separate homeowner's insurance policy. When a condo has a master insurance policy that covers all of everything except for walls in.
So with the condo, you have more assurance that it would be taken care of?
As long as all the owners pay their HOA dues and the budget is done accordingly and correctly.
If I may, in light of Commissioner Etheridge's question, with the condominium complex, you're dependent not on what you do, but on what you and everybody else does.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the board members, staff? Okay, I think we're good.
That would be our showing. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, at this time, I'm going to open up the public hearing on PB 20-24. And I believe some of the individuals may have already spoke, but I'm going to go ahead and I had John Morrison signed up.
Yeah.
You're good, okay. And then Sam Miller, have you signed up? You're good, okay. And then I had Brandon Dixon, he had spoken, and Kim Tate has already spoke. I have no one else signed up. Is there anyone out there that did not get a chance to sign the public hearing that would like to speak? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and close public hearing. At this point, I am going to go ahead and close the evidentiary phase of the of this hearing. And yes,
I was looking over the information that we received. I have some concern about I think it's on page 24. Aspect public facilities.
24.
Page 27, number 3. So I'm understanding this correctly, that last time, because it wasn't a special use, that the adequate public facilities didn't come into play, and now it does. I'm not quite understanding that. I don't know if.
I guess I would,
I can
ask staff to, okay.
Yeah, I can try to help with that. If you can go to the slides.
I think last time I was confused over
Okay,
that.
no, that's perfect.
This slide thing.
That's perfect. So what happened before with the rezoning? That is a legislative decision. So therefore, it. Sorry about that.
There we go.
Okay.
The what happened previously was a rezoning, so that was a legislative decision. Therefore, the use permit standards did not have to be met, which included the adequate public facilities ordinance. Once the property is submitted for subdivision, that's when the adequate public facilities ordinance applies, and that's the language there tonight. And what you'll see in the, let me see what page. Let me see. Wrong way. With the school counts, what the board asked for a couple of retreats ago was this thing called committed capacity, and that's your planning tool. That shows you if everything that was approved, including these rezonings, that's what capacity could potentially be there. So you think that committed capacity captures those rezonings. And even if there's not adequate public facilities, but a rezoning is improved, it's still captured under committed capacity. But what happens when you do a subdivision that triggers the use permit, that's when it actually has to meet the test of the adequate public facilities ordinance and the standards for a use permit.
So if I understand you correctly, last time I was questioning about the kids being already put into the school system, and everybody was saying, well, they're already there, so it doesn't matter. But you had to put them in there, even if it put it over the adequate public.
Right. That's not the committed capacity that you saw is not something that has been run through. Not all of those kids have been run through that adequate public facilities ordinance. That's just a planning tool, so you can see that if all of these rezonings were approved, if all the lots were developed, this is what you'd have. So even if there was a capacity with the rezoning, we cannot apply that adequate public facility standards. But the subdivision that requires a use permit is what's triggering that adequate public facilities ordinance.
So by changing how, from going from condos to townhouses, according to our own ordinance, we're supposed to look at the adequate public facilities, correct?
Correct.
But that, so,
Good.
but those kids are already counted, so they've already been counted,
Here we go.
your paper kids, right? So, if Mr. Miller chose to do a condo tomorrow, those kids would still impact the school. He can do that. He already has permission from this board to build condos. He's just changing basically the designation from a condo to a townhome, but because of the subdivision of the property, we're having this conversation for a special use permit.
Right, because he's subdividing the property, which triggers a use permit, because one of our facilities is over 85%, that triggers these smaller lot developments to come to you. That subdividing of the property is what requires the adequate public facilities ordinance to come into play.
So those numbers, then, the percentages and the numbers that were presented up here reflected the year ago's that application, that when he applied for it?
Yes.
Yeah, correct. Okay, so we're not adding, we're looking back from a year, so that information presented then did get count all a year ago's, okay.
It was counted a year ago, but even if there was not adequate public facilities, that number would have still captured it. The difference is now is that we're subdividing, it's triggering the adequate public facilities ordinance.
Just because of the policy.
Well, I must be simple, but you're telling me that before, it didn't matter if we were at capacity, we still had to.
The board doesn't have to approve something if there's a concern for adequate public facilities, but if something is approved, and let's say schools, for example, are exceeding the standard that's set in the ordinance for adequate public facilities, even if it's over capacity, if the board approves it, that committed capacity captures that number.
So as I was looking through the staff's findings and recommendations, one of the things that became apparent is that the two policies the three objections, right? There were two policies and the inadequate public facilities cited. The facts are, correct me if I'm wrong, but the two policies that were cited were also specifically using inadequate public facilities. So basically, the three reasons cited by staff for denial was the inadequate public facilities. Do you agree with that?
I don't. If you look at the policies that are cited, they're from different sections in the land use plan. So one specifically dealt with schools. The other specifically dealt with adequate public facilities. So that's schools, that's fire EMS, that's sheriff, that's...
Okay, but nobody in staff brought up a concern about public safety or fire EMS. The only thing that was mentioned at last meeting, and I get it, you're here. Okay, so let me ask you, what is your understanding of what our ordinance states when it comes to public relative to schools, adequate public facilities? Actually, it deals with all of them, but specific to adequate public facilities.
Sure, if we can switch back to the slide. No development authorized by a use permit shall exceed the county's ability to provide adequate public facilities, including but not limited to schools, fire and rescue, law enforcement, and other county facilities. Applicable state standards and guidelines shall be followed for determining when public facilities are adequate. All required public facilities shall be in place or programmed to be in place within 2 years after the initial approval of the use permit.
Are you aware of any projects that might impact public facilities, specifically schools?
I don't. What do you mean by projects?
Are you
Like
aware
developments?
of any discussions that the county has had, including the letting of contracts, to address the overcrowding in Moyock Elementary School right now?
I'm aware that there's discussion about signing a contract, yes, a notice to proceed. As far as I know, that hasn't happened yet.
Are you aware that there is no anticipated issues with having those facilities in place within the 2 years?
I certainly
So
can't say that the schools will be ready in 2 years. That's,
What does program to be in place mean to you?
to me, it's really what the planning director interprets, but to me, it would mean that the contract would be signed and in place.
Is that spelled out somewhere?
It's not.
Okay.
Could I ask the county manager for clarification just regarding, I know because you'd made a comment earlier about the school's process, and then staff is...
Certainly, and
Okay.
I think one of the issues is that the construction of a school expansion project, a new school, anything that adds public facilities is certainly something that myself and the engineering staff is going to be more familiar with. So we're on track to sign a notice to proceed June 1st to have classroom expansion for Moyock Elementary in place by August of 2023. So just to speak to the question that you had, Vice Chairman Beaumont.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So.
How many
Mr. Chairman,
projects are not completed on time?
I can only speak to the ones that we're doing right now. Obviously, we've had issues with COVID. One of the things that we've had discussions with the contractor about and design team on the elementary school project is that the classroom space is the priority. So we've got this project is pretty complex because you've got an expansion and renovation of Moyock Elementary School and Moyock Middle School. And so by placing a priority on getting those adequate public facilities in place, I have not had any communication that they have a concern with August of 2023 being the date that the classroom space can be available.
And even getting supplies, because my understanding supplies are at a hard to get. I don't know.
I think it depends on the kind of supplies you're talking about. I can tell you that a lot of the issues that we've had at our construction projects are more along the lines of weather related. We've had some slowdown. Windows specifically slowed down a little bit at the first of the pandemic. When you get to other things, there's some electrical components that we've had some slowdowns with, or maybe HVAC components. But like I said, I'm going to depend on the experts, which would be the general contractor and the design team, on when that project could be completed by.
Mr. Chairman. So are we not adding 2 additional mobile classrooms or 1 at Moyock now?
We have purchased 3 additional units. 2, I believe, will go to Shawboro, and 1 will go to Moyock in anticipation of bridging the gap not only between this and the expansion, but also, as we'll talk about later tonight, there's on the agenda is a contract to purchase land, which is kind of phase 2 of dealing with school capital needs, which would be the construction of a new elementary school.
Is the addition of that 1 mobile classroom with what's already there added into these figures?
I'll speak to that. So the numbers for as far as what the adequate public facility, what is an adequate public facility capacity number for schools actually comes from the school system. So they do not add in the mobile classrooms at this time.
Even though they are classrooms.
Like I said, it's really up to it's up to
building.
them to define
That's
adequate
not here to
public
answer
facilities.
that,
But in all of this, the reality is those kids are already going to go to that school. If Mr. Miller wants to build condos next week, those kids are going to hit those schools no matter what action we take tonight. If we're really here just talking about the subdivision of his property and letting him sell his property a different way, and it's not going to go up or down or impact our schools any differently than it would have before he decided to come before us for the special use permit. And to be fair to staff, is it fair to say that you guys are, when you look at this, you have to be more black and white, right? We have the ability to have some room to maneuver, to change our policies based on the majority of the board, but
And I think that's what really needs to happen here, and staff has asked for a work session with the Board of Commissioners,
Right.
And it's been indicated that that'll be May or June, because we have to enforce the UDO as it's written.
right.
If you don't agree with how it's written, your values are different than what it's calling for, then you need to amend the text.
Right.
So that way we can get on the same page.
Right. So, and I talked about this recently with a reporter actually, but you know that a lot of people lose sight of the fact that it's not that you're necessarily for or against the project. You're interpreting the UDO based on what's in front of you, and have to be either left or right on it. You can't waver on some of this stuff where we have that authority as a body to do that. So I just wanted to make sure that anybody watching tonight understands why there may be a disparity in this case between our action and what the staff is actually recommending, and it's just because of the nature of the beast, basically.
Could you explain to us why we have a UDO? Maybe the county attorney could explain that.
Well, you have a UDO because at some point in time, the governing board determined that the regulation of planning and growth within the county was an important value. So that's why you would have had first, as required by statute, in order to create and apply a zoning ordinance, a land use plan, which again, through the community expresses its values, and the board then adopting those community values of how the community at that point in time wants to see the county grow and develop. From that, then, the regulatory language, the ordinance, is created and adopted to then be applied to, you hope, continue to put forward the community values as a unit of local government grows or expands. But as noted, it is up to the legislative body to determine at any given point in time, the Board of Commissioners, whether there is a need to modify, amend, repeal even certain sections of a regulatory ordinance if it is no longer deemed to be meeting the values of the community as expressed through its elected Board of Commissioners.
I would like to make a comment, if I may, to this board. Just remember, we are sitting as a quasi-judicial, and we are discussing specifically this item here, and I don't want to see us kind of getting off into, side discussions of generalizations of opinions and why something in general like the UDO. I think that's open for a different discussion for a different day. So I just ask the board if we just stay focused on this item here.
But I think, and let me just add, it's important to note, you are the finders of fact. So you are in receipt of evidence, and it is up to you as the finders of fact to weigh that evidence and determine from the evidence presented to you whether the requirements for issuance of a use permit have or have not been met. So that is your role tonight.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a comment?
Yes, sir, come on up. Do I have to open the, this is not, is this a,
This is a legal argument. It's
okay,
not-
nothing, okay, no testimony.
I understand the hearing is over.
Okay, thank you.
You're quite correct. I commend the excellent work that the staff does, and certainly your manager and the county attorney, who's a good friend. I think there's also one other legal point. You're sitting as a court, and you're correct. You have certain inherent judicial powers, and you have certain equitable powers. You are faced tonight with construction of a statute. Your ordinance is a statute. There are certain rules that the courts have evolved over the years on statutory interpretation. And one of these rules that might be applicable, and I respectfully bring to your attention, is if you're getting into a gray area, and like what is an adequate public facility? Do we have, that's a pretty broad concept. Are we meeting certain standards, et cetera? The rule of the courts is in statutory interpretation, if a statute can be interpreted so as to render a reasonable result, that is favored, that interpretation is favored over interpreting a statute so that it renders an irrational result. And let me respectfully suggest what I would ask you to consider. You can build this. There will be the same occupancy, the same number of children, if you call it a condominium and make it more difficult for people to purchase because of the financing. That's okay. It's not okay for you to build this, even though it'll produce the exact same number of children because you got the same number of bedrooms. It's the same property. It's not in a different location of the county. It's not different amenities. It's none of that. Okay. It's not okay to build this, even though it produces the same potential number of children, if you make it easier for the people in Currituck County to buy. I would suggest to you that would render an irrational interpretation of your statute. And the more rational interpretation is, what is the core concern here? It is the children and reasonable housing in Currituck County. It's going to be the same number of children because it is the same project. It's just easier for people to afford if you do it one way as opposed to the other. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Does this board have any other questions?
I mean, the stats of the school number, and I've asked the superintendent that multiple times. I mean, the adequate public facilities with the number of the kids, we're over a year now from all the restrictions and so forth from COVID, and your percentage of the kids, so those numbers aren't even correct. Now, they might be correct in 2022, but they might not. I mean, we might be the 50th state to stop wearing masks or stop, having to, I mean, we have, single-digit COVID cases, and we still, we're having to wear masks in Currituck County, but that's just another thing.
All right, does the board have any further questions from this board? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and ask the board for some action, ask for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move to approve PV 20-04 Shingle Landing Villas preliminary plat use permit because the applicant has demonstrated the proposed use meets the use permit review standards of the UDO. Use permit review standards worksheet 1. Use will not endanger the public health or safety. Stormwater management has been designed in accordance with the conditional zoning approval and has been approved by the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality. Stormwater retention ponds will be constructed to manage and retain stormwater and slow release into the adjacent stormwater outlets. A wastewater collection system and lift station has been designed and approved by NCDEQ, which will be pumped to the Mayotte Regional Wastewater Treatment System. The project has been designed and approved by the Division of Energy, Mineral, and Land Resources for sedimentation and erosion control, and will minimize erosion and contain siltation on the site. NCDOT has reviewed and approved the connection to Mayotte Landing Drive. Number 2, the use will injure the value of adjoining or abutting lands and will not be in harmony with the area in which it is located. I think that should be will not injure. Land to the north is a single-family residential but has a significant tree buffer to the site. Land to the east is the Currituck House Assisted Living Facility. Land to the west is commercial, and land to the south is residential. The county commissioners determined that the use is appropriate for the land by virtue of conditional zoning approval that was granted and amended in 2018. It was determined that this development creates a new residential use type and an appropriate density for this area where county water and sewer are available and provides a moderate cost housing opportunity for county residents within a well-designed neighborhood. 3, the use will be in conformity with the land use plan or other officially adopted plans. It was determined in 2018 that the proposed development is consistent with the 2006 land use plan because county water and sewer are available to the site, and this use will help grow these systems. B, it is at a density appropriate for the location, policy HN1. C, it is located in the fastest growing area of the county that continues to evolve as a full-service community, Mayotte policy emphasis. 2, the amended conditional rezoning request is consistent with the Mayotte small area plan because A, there will be sidewalk connection to the assisted living facility, park, and subdivision to the east under TR2. Infrastructure and service needs of the community are met. IS2, I believe that's right. C, impervious lot coverage reduces and stormwater is properly managed. IS4, it is compatible with rural atmosphere, transitional areas, and a small town Main Street feel, CC1. 4, the use will not exceed the county's ability to provide adequate public facilities. 1, the Board of Commissioners determined in 2018 that the development is reasonable and in the public interest and that adequate public facilities are available to service the project. Construction of the project has been delayed due to Currituck County's inability to provide a wastewater connection, but now that the sewer capacity has been made available, the project is now moving forward in accordance with the original conditions of approval.
Thank you, Commissioner Allen. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion from the board? Okay, hearing none, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor, ayes?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 6-1. Thank you. Before we move on to the next item, I'll ask this board, would they like a 5-minute break really quick or move forward?
Paul, did you say please?
Good with it, yeah.
You want a break?
Yeah, I need it.
All right, let's take a quick 5-minute break. Be back at 7 o'clock if you could, please. Is PB 21-05 text amendment. Private open space request to amend the Unified Development Ordinance Section 1.8.6 and 10.5 to allow construction of a police, fire, or EMS facility on county-owned land designated as open space in a planned unit development and amend the definition of police, fire, and EMS facility to include training facilities. And I believe we have Ms. Turner presenting this.
That's correct. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. This text amendment was initiated by the board To give some background, Corolla Fire and Rescue wants to improve their firefighting response services by constructing a fire training facility in Corolla. And the facility is proposed to be on county property. See if I can, oh, right here. So county property here behind the existing Pine Island fire station. This is a view of Pine Island PUD sketch plan. I just zoomed in here so you can get an idea of where it's located. Southern Beach access is here. Fire station's here, adjacent to Pine Island. The property is located in Pine Island Plan Unit Development, and the fire training facility use was not permitted in the PUD and the open space that this property is designated. You can see here all this hatched area is designated open space within the Plan Unit Development. So the PUDs are the predominant type of development in the paved road portion of Corolla. And it's a type of development permitted under prior zoning ordinances. PUDs were intended to foster development, expected to promote a more efficient use of land, a higher level of amenities, and more creative design. And they have these detailed sketch plans that lay out the uses within the PUD, residential areas, commercial areas, and open space areas. This text amendment will give the county the flexibility to cite needed public safety facilities on county-owned land here in Pine Island PUD. Just wanted to give you an idea of the facility that the fire department sent to staff when they initially started having talks about trying to put this facility in. My understanding is it's going to be composed of 6 recycled storage containers attached to a concrete slab, and the storage containers will allow for simulation of building access with artificial smoke and darkness, and no utilities are proposed for the building. So here's the language that's proposed, and in your packet, I've included the full text of this section of the ordinance to give you some more context for PUDs and how they're reviewed. Here on the screen, I just have the 2 changes to the ordinance to add to the allowable uses in planning unit developments. County-owned land designated as open space may be used as a police, fire, or EMS facility. And just to make sure there's no, it's clear that we've added this line to the definition of police, fire, EMS facility to also include training facilities. That's in Chapter 10, the definitions. Staff did narrowly tailor this language because of being in a PUD and how the PUDs are developed and designed. I'm sure you've seen these many a time. These are the text amendment review standards. Is the text amendment consistent with the county adopted plans, the ordinance, required by change conditions, demonstrate a community need, consistent with the zoning districts, or improve compatibility among uses? Will it result in a logical and orderly development pattern and not result in significantly adverse impacts on the natural environment? And in making a decision, the board shall adopt the statement of consistency and reasonableness. That describes whether the decision is consistent with county adopted plans and explains why the decision is reasonable and in the public interest. And staff suggests that this text amendment is consistent with the 2006 land use plan policy regarding public safety services, policy 1. As the area grows, the county may establish strategically located substations for public safety services, provided that sufficient resources can be made available to properly staff and equip them. Public safety services policy 2. Currituck County shall support and encourage the development and improvement of firefighting services that enhance the security and safety of life and property while resulting in the added benefit of lower property insurance rates. And special policy for the Outer Banks, policy 1. Currituck County supports the provision of infrastructure adequate to meet basic quality of life and public health and safety requirements of residents on the Outer Banks, while at the same time not stimulating inappropriate intensive development in environmentally fragile, hazardous barrier island areas. And staff suggests that the request is reasonable and in the public interest because it addresses a demonstrated community need by allowing for training facilities that will improve firefighting training opportunities at Corolla. And staff and the planning board recommend approval of the text language before you tonight.
Ms. Turner, would there be anything in there that would have So the picture you put up was of a bright red building, and I get everything fire trucks is red. But it does not go with the area over there at all. Is there anything prohibiting them from making a building look like that, color scheme wise?
Like it's a design
Currently.
standard in the ordinance?
Not really. Well, yeah, design standard, but really a color standard, so that it kind of blends in better with the PUD, right?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, one other thing I would suggest that the county would want to do with regard to use of the property, should this text be approved, is to enter into, at a minimum, a license or some other form of agreement with the Volunteer Fire Department, which is a nonprofit corporation, and certainly within that agreement, you could provide some type of standard.
Okay.
As the board might desire.
So then, if we're to make a motion to approve, then we would add that to the language that they would need to enter into a contract with the county to gain approval.
I think they would certainly the county would want to require that at a minimum in order to provide for a number of things, including liability protection for the county.
Okay. Do we need to add that language?
I don't think you do. We'll bring forward at the next meeting a proposed MOU or
Right.
license agreement
Okay.
of some form.
Okay.
This is just to get the ordinance language in place to
Right.
make it an allowable use.
Well,
that
just think
they
about
can-
while we're doing it, that they're, obviously that's not going to fit behind the fine, just color scheme wise, right?
Sure.
A blue and gray building would be fine back
Well,
there.
it's ironic because red is not the color that
Right.
Corolla's fire truck
White.
is.
Well, and let me tell you, when they start burning the bales of hay in there with kerosene and all that.
I don't know that they
you-
are.
Going to,
Well, it's some firehouse when they do that, they're not red. Let me tell you that.
I have
Not white anymore.
right.
I have a question,
No.
Mr. Chairman, regarding the terminology of the facility first, the ordinance. I mean, due to us, out of 100 counties in the state of North Carolina, there's 3 that don't have municipalities, the word police. I mean, should it possibly say law enforcement? Because
Yes.
we don't have any police in Currituck. And then if we have training, it would be highway patrol, or be it marine fisheries, be it wildlife, ALE. I mean, is that something that we should,
I think that's a good catch. Yes.
Good catch.
Yeah. Agree.
because now we wouldn't even be, the sheriff's department wouldn't be able to train there.
No, that's okay.
Well, I mean, certainly it would.
Yeah, but I mean, is that something, I mean, should
I
we
mean,
change that one word?
For consistency, that certainly.
Yeah, because like, if Elizabeth City Police wants to come over and train them, they could always rent it out or something, but yeah.
So I mean, change that to law
Law
enforcement?
enforcement, fire, or EMS facility.
Yeah, I mean, just because, I mean, it would probably be
Yeah.
Let's,
deputy.
can we add to that we also change that language to make it consistent throughout the ordinance, not just in the definition, because there's going to be other places that aren't
Yeah,
mentioned
that's
in
where,
this.
that's why I wanted to bring that up.
Okay.
So I mean, like the highway patrol or marine fisheries or those guys that are wildlife that are in Corolla a lot, if they climbed aboard and trained, it would.
Is there any other questions from the board? If not, I'll ask the board then, well, excuse me. We have to, we have an open public comment on BB 20-05. I have no one signed up. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing on this and ask the board for some action on the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move to approve PB 21-05 because the request is consistent with the following 2006 land use policies or plans. Policy PS1, Policy PS2, and Policy OB1. And the request is reasonable and in the public interest because it addresses a demonstrated community need by allowing for training facilities that will improve firefighter training opportunities in Corolla. And I would further add that we put law enforcement in the place of police within the language and elsewhere as necessary for uniformity's sake.
Okay, we have a motion. Have a second?
I'll second it.
A motion and second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, the next item under new business is consideration of sale and purchase agreement for acquisition of property located on Tulls Creek Road, Moac, North Carolina, PIN number 0022000000210000. And with that, I believe we have our County Attorney, Ike McCree, presenting this.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, before you tonight to address the school needs that you heard about in a previous case this evening is a agreement for purchase and sale of land to be entered into between the county and the property owner, Susan K. Coleman. The property is located on Tolls Creek Road, just, I guess the direction might be south of the county library in Moyock. It is a tract of 36.21 acres, and the purchase price will be $890,000. The majority of the contract is boilerplate language, so I just hit a couple of other highlights and be glad to answer any questions if you have any about the boilerplate language. Other terms and conditions will be that the county will have 90-day due diligence period, during which time we will be obtaining a Phase 1 environmental survey of the property, a boundary survey, and we also will be having a site evaluation for on-site wastewater treatment. And then closing is to take place within 30 days of the end of the 90-day due diligence period. Those are the basic and major requirements of the contract, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Did I see in there that the property is going to be farmed through November of 2021? And if that's true, does that impact any of the county's ability to move forward on the project?
There is a farm lease that will continue until November 2021, so the county will take the property subject to that farm lease. It is my belief that we'll be able to access the property with some communication with the farmer to make sure that we're not interfering with his or her work and or the production of crops on the land.
But that shouldn't impair the ability of us to move forward with that, acquiring the property?
I don't anticipate that it would.
I do have possible corrections. It says Susan K. Coleman, where she signed it on the back page of Susan Coleman K.
Well, we will make sure that we have her name correct. This contract actually came from her and her agent, so we will communicate with them to make sure they have provided us with the correct name and signature.
In the 90-day due diligence, I know there's multiple. The county managers addressed this. There's multiple accesses to this facility or the property where the school's going to possibly be located at. And the NCDOT said with the study and all that stuff, that was my major holdup, that they would definitely entertain what we put to it, I guess, maybe.
I think the managers communicated with DOT and got some kind of initial idea from
that was just my only holdup.
them.
I had a conversation with the district engineer, and his statement to me was that as we go through the design of the school, we'll have to complete a TIA. And so whatever the TIA, if it recommends speed limit reduction, if it recommends second lanes, all of those traffic safety additions will be followed. We will have to install, if it's additional lanes, we'd have to do that at our cost, but as far as speed limit, school zones, and all that kind of stuff, it would come from the TIA, and NCDOT would follow whatever it says.
Okay, any other?
The theoretical plan is to bring it up the drive to the library and the entrance be there.
That's definitely an option. We're so early in this, I'd hate to.
But also a couple different.
There's access at two places on Tolls Creek and up and down. Is it Campus Drive, I think, there by the library?
Mm-hmm. So there's multiple options to get that. That was my other. Okay, thank you.
Do we have any other questions from the board? Hearing none, I'll ask the board for some action on this for approval. I have a motion.
I'll second it.
And a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, sir. The next item, under new business B, consideration of an ordinance amending Chapter 2, Article 2, Section 2-65 of the Currituck County Code of Ordinance to add county attorney report to the Board of Commissioners agenda. And let me just preference this. during the evaluations, this was a suggestion that was brought to the county attorney, and at the further discussion, I think the attorney thinks this would be a good idea to, I'll let him go ahead and present here on that.
Yeah, during it, and thank you for the evaluation. I do appreciate it. It's the first time in 32 years, although I've asked many other boards for an evaluation, that I've received one. So I appreciate very much this board taking the time to do that. And I had a good meeting with the chairman and vice chairman about my evaluation. And during the course of that, we discussed and believed it'd be a good idea to add to your agenda, not only for you to hear what your attorney is doing, but also for the citizens to hear and perhaps help them understand and become educated on county government. And because this, of course, is a corporation, is a corporate entity of what, $7.6 billion in value, to understand another aspect of county governance that they may not realize is occurring on a daily basis. And I also mentioned to the chairman and vice chairman that in fact, when I was town attorney for town of Nags Head, that was and continues to be a regular part of their agenda, the town attorney report, to be able to keep the board and the community up to speed on what is going on with regard to legal representation of the locality. So I'm more than happy and glad to have this added. So what's before you tonight at page 72 of your agenda package is an ordinance amendment amending section 2-65 of the Code of Ordinances, which sets out the order of business for your agendas, and it will now be adding, following the county manager's report, the county attorney's report, and then it shifts all the other pieces of your agenda accordingly. I'd answer any questions. I'm sorry? If you'd like me to wear a powdered wig and a robe, I'd be more than happy.
I've been thinking the same thing. But I think people would be absolutely amazed at how many different responsibilities you have.
Well, I mentioned some of the representation that I perform for some other agencies and departments that the chairman did not realize. I also started talking about some numbers of contracts, that are reviewed and signed off. And so the vice chairman made a point, some data and would be good to hear as well. So you're going to be hearing from me over a period of time, not only the status of cases to the extent I can discuss that with you in public. You'll be hearing the numbers of departments I may have met with since the last meeting and the highlights of some of those meetings, some of the projects that are ongoing, some of the things I see maybe perhaps coming that can be discussed publicly. The numbers of ordinances and the amount of other pieces of the legal department that goes on. We participate fully in the collection of taxes, for example. So my paralegal, Sandy Salenbean, spends a lot of time performing title work and preparing the documents, not only for the tax office that are necessary to get a tax judgment to recordation, but also following up to prepare and to assist with the sheriff's department execution and sale on property, and then following up with the different payoffs, and culminating in preparation of a deed and the sheriff's conveying a piece of property to someone after sale. So that's just a part of what we do, but I'm glad to be able to share that with you going forward.
I think the citizens, this board, and a lot of people are looking forward to getting the updates.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
In an attempt to help provide full disclosure, I make a motion we approve this.
Second that. A motion, and we have a second, Commissioner White. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, sir. Okay, next item under new business, item C, consideration of an ordinance amending Chapter 9, Article 3, Section 9 through 33, 9-33 and 9-36 of the Currituck County Code of Ordinances, modifying requirements for issuance of amplified sound permits and permits to exceed certain decibel levels.
Beginning at page 75 of your agenda package is a proposed amendment to the ordinance sections as identified by the chairman, also known as the noise ordinance. This matter was actually brought to the attention of county administration by Sheriff Bikert and by our travel and tourism director, Tamarin Kugler, because there is provision in our noise ordinance which would limit actually the number of permits that authorize the use of amplified sound or permit to exceed decibel levels in certain circumstances to no more than 2 permits per month within 1,000-foot radius of another permit that has been issued within the month, or would prohibit the sheriff from issuing permits for events on consecutive weekends, and in any event, no more than 2 permits could be issued for one location in an entire year. And so you can imagine, certainly from our travel and tourism department, their great concern that would pretty much end the ability to have weddings or perhaps a number of other events at historic Corolla Park. And of course, that would have a heavy impact and probably cause the same problem for a number of wedding venues, not only on the beach, but throughout the county. And so at the suggestion of the sheriff and his support, and I believe there will be adequate protection that still would occur relative to these types of permits for the community, we are recommending the substantive portion of amendment on page 78 of your agenda package, which would strike that limitation or prohibition on the issuance of certain permits exceeding decibel level or the amplified sound permit. The remainder of the modifications are non-substantive changes just to correct some typographical errors or some editorial things to make the ordinance read more cleanly as it was adopted many decades ago. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
So I've been at multiple commissioner meetings where, and I'm going to use the event houses, quote unquote, as the example and as that was brought forth. And you have people living next door to a house that is technically a single family dwelling that have to listen to a party every week when new guests were showing up, and there was another wedding this week. And because not everybody in the Outer Banks is a vacationer, there's quite a few people that actually live there. And there was huge concern over the noise that was associated with this. I'm going to say the pacifier, the only thing that assured them that the county was going to make sure that they were not now living next to a nuisance was the limitations that were placed upon the excessive noise ordinance. So I'm curious, and I get it. We advertised that this was coming out on the agenda, but I'm not sure. Did they say anything at the Whalehead?
Not a peep.
I will. I am very apprehensive about passing this, and what you just addressed. You're increasing the level of sound from, I think, 72 to 80, which doesn't sound like much, but decibels are not linear. It's not, 8, clicks to the dial. It is a exponential increase. That's how decibels work. So, and I don't know what 72 decibels sounds like. I don't know what 80 decibels sound like. But if I were living next to one of the houses that had folks coming in and were able to get unlimited number of noise permits, I think we'd be very remiss.
Well, is that considered residential or commercial? Because residential has a lower rating than commercial use does.
Well, the other thing.
There is a residential.
Yeah, so residential has a lower rating than the commercial.
Well, the other thing is that if you get a
it hasn't been increased.
if you get a noise
60.
Yeah, 60 hasn't been increased.
Yeah, if you get a noise permit, the noise permit ends at
76.
And Friday night's a different.
Yeah, if you get a noise permit, the noise permit ends at 11, so they're not partying until 2 a.m.
Well, they're partying. They just
Well,
turn
I mean, they
music
probably
down.
are. They just cut the
After
music
9
down.
p.m., it drops to 50.
Let me also suggest, I think inadvertently, we've already been experiencing what Vice Chairman Beaumont is expressing concern about, in that it is my understanding that in the past there have been unlimited numbers of noise permits that have been issued for the same location. It was Sheriff Bikert with some close reading that came up with this issue that, if we want to allow, again, these types of events around the county, and particularly on county property, there needs to be a modification to the ordinance.
Because if not, they could only have 2 at Whalehead, or they could only have 2 at Muddy Motorsports.
Right.
With Dennis Anderson stuff. But I mean, the other thing is too, like you said, in those permits, and I know this from working in the office, those permits, I mean, like you come in, if Bob come in and applied for a permit, you know, they're going through and all this stuff. And if there's like, and it's Bob's area, so I'll say that, you know, if Bob had a permit on Friday night for this, and then we got a lot of complaints or whatever, and there's permits in the past that have been denied for people that have abused some of the stuff.
And to that point, it is not automatic.
Yeah, it's not a guarantee.
I commend to you, within the ordinance still, what the sheriff may and should consider when deciding whether to issue a permit is the timeliness of the application, the nature of the requested activity, previous experience with the applicant, the time of the event, other activities in the vicinity of the location proposed, the frequency of the application, the cultural or social benefits of the proposed activity, the effect of the activity on any residential area of the county, and previous violations, if any, of the applicant.
So I would suggest that would be the excuse for granting multiple permits to the county, right? Because we're policing it, but
It's the same thing. It's complaint driven by somebody.
that-
And the other thing is too, far as the noise decibels, like you were asking the difference in those, we have they're high tech, and I mean, which we literally was an 8-hour training class of the noise meter on how to properly work the thing, and it's pretty high tech. I believe we have 4 in Corolla. I know we have 4, maybe 6. I think we have 4 in Corolla and 2 on the mainland. But I mean, there is.
That event house is a residential structure, though, correct?
It is.
So that would
Yes.
fall under
It
residential
would be
guidelines.
deemed a
Okay.
residential use occupancy.
Okay.
but
Friday,
again,
Saturday, and holidays is when it goes up to 80.
No.
Yeah, on table 2.
yeah.
And then during the week, basically, you're at,
Oh, yeah, you know, you're right. That's a
Still has
commercial there.
time frame.
It does.
it still
Commercial.
gives you the time frame from 5 to 11.
Yeah.
So,
Just remember when this came out and Corolla was here in droves about we need help. And it was, the county can't restrict their parking. I mean, you know, there are limitations on their parking. Yeah. But they were blowing through that. There was.
Kevin, do you know, sorry, Paul, if there's, so the Black Stallion, for instance, we always heard from
Right.
Mr. Knock on that. Do you know, like, how many permits they get in a year on that? Like, I mean, is it really, are they getting 4 or something, or 6, or is it?
Like for somebody who gets a lot of them, possibly?
Yeah.
Or what do you mean, far as like, I mean, besides like the county venues,
Having a density issue within a neighborhood.
they
So-
have to, and if they don't, and I mean, I'm tell you what, you want to make somebody mad, they have to apply for it 72 hours before they get it. If they don't, and we've had them come in there 48 hours a day before, and we're like, we're sorry. I mean, it says right on the, actually, I think I brought the thing.
So they're
With
more
me
in
tonight,
violation
Forrest.
than they are using this.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of strict rules on it, you know, as far as, you know, as far as for it to go through the application process. I mean, like I said, as far as how many do we issue? Last year, because of COVID, it was
Well,
probably
nothing,
extremely
yeah, but
weird.
19 was
But
obviously
19
zero.
probably 60 maybe, 50 to 60 maybe. And that's just off the top of my head. I would say 50 to 60.
But literally, I mean, you've got somebody that could, and again, with the way this is,
They could have one every weekend.
you could have one every week.
But that, and I think part of the problem was, before they were issuing them anyway, and the sheriff caught on that you're only allowed to issue 2,
Two,
right?
yes,
So
he did.
this has already been going on. He just caught a problem.
Yeah.
in the auditorium.
And the other thing is,
really
too,
speaking to Tamron,
one thing too that I mean, like this is the two major things that's highlighted in these. If they have a wedding venue or something like a Dennis Anderson's, I mean, it's like a 4-hour event in their thing. I mean, especially during the evening time, and it can't extend past 11. So in the summertime, somebody can have a outside cookout and they could be loud till 10 o'clock, and that's quiet time. You know, as far as the morning, or somebody firing up a Kubota tractor and bush hogging a field at 9:30 at night, they can do that too until 10 o'clock, as long as it doesn't exceed those decibels. And when they call and complain, especially in Corolla in the summertime, we have to respond a lot. But I mean, like I said, as far as there has been, I know, I don't want to say 10%, but I would say probably 5 to 10%, probably some of the ones with frequent abusers of it didn't get it. And it's hostile when they don't. But I mean, like I said, we don't bend on the 72 hours beforehand. They have to notify the adjacent neighbors and all that stuff of what they have going on and everything.
My recommendation would be that we table this item tonight and we push out more communication to residents in the Outer Banks and get their feedback, because, I've been there. I don't want to hear it night after night. And the fallback is they don't have a permit, so they got to turn it down. And I don't know.
Well, even if they have a permit, if they exceed, it's just a little bit.
Right.
They still have to. We actually respond to ones. Tim Posh, I think, had 2 last year, and we didn't have any issues. He's probably gotten 4 permits since he's had the golf course and the restaurant, 4 or 5 over the last few years, and I think we've had maybe 2 or 3 complaints out of his 5 events. So that's.
But it was there.
Pretty much, but yeah, but like I said, he didn't. They had shut it off when they were supposed to shut it off, and so forth. So the rules on these, if somebody gets one, they have to dot every I and every.
But the other thing, and again, I don't know what 60 decibels sounds like versus 80 decibels, but that is a significant volume up, and this doesn't just mean a house down the street. This could be the guy next door, and
All right. Well, I think what you're suggesting has some merit, that we should put this out for public consumption. Also, it will give us some time to do a little digging, and let's find out how many permits
let's
are
get
actually.
The stats, yeah.
Go back a few years pre-COVID. Let's see how many are actually going out.
2018.
The number that are actually going out might be shockingly low, ultimately, and this becomes a moot point.
Well,
use
the question I have then is, if we get this feedback and the board decides not to take action on this, do we now stop the venues at
Well, we might change the verbiage at that point. I would think we would allow for the county to do things at parks or whatever. I don't,
you certainly have the ability to modify
change up
the
the
ordinance.
Yeah, because you got residents that live next to Whalehead too, though.
Right, but
No way where the weather
Right.
would go on.
I will say, when we wrote this ordinance originally, the question came down is, can you successfully prosecute it? And because it's somewhat subjective to a lot of people.
Well, I think certainly with the decibel level provision,
that made it enforceable.
That is an instrument that
We wrote citations from the noise.
Now, we also
I've actually
have, of course, the
wrote a
reasonable
couple.
person standard
Yeah.
that's also continues within the ordinance. That would be a little bit more difficult probably to prosecute, because you have to put the complaint on the stand and the judge have to make a determination that that is a reasonable person, first of all.
And we were also told that judges didn't want to see these things.
Well, I don't think they much want to see any county ordinance, but they need to understand that it is a law that is just as applicable as a general statute and deserves as much respect.
Because there is a distance to that decibel. What is it, 250? I can't remember the distance from the property line.
Well, remember this was modified 2008 or so that no longer would it would be measured from the property line of the complainant, not the property line from the location where the noise is emanating, and that was because a former commissioner was receiving complaints for his operation in Grandy from people phoning it in from Moyoc.
Great.
Because I remember that
right.
Dennis Muddy's Motor Sports Park, we had a guy that lived completely across the swamp that was saying he didn't want to hear anything going on.
Okay, so what's
what 4 to 6 events a year.
So what's the pleasure of this board? Do we want to go ahead
Mr.
and
Chairman, I'm going to make a motion that we we move this to be heard again at our second meeting in April, which would be the 19th, I believe. If that You're going to be out of town. Do you want to take it a little further out? Just
Well,
give
you-
me COD data.
You've got a difficulty here. As far as putting public information out, I mean, the clerk can direct Randall to put it out on Facebook, put it out on the website. We can do all that within 2 weeks. I would be hesitant to push it out any further because one of the other groups that we heard from a lot on this was the wedding industry, and
All
so
right.
if we push it out much further, you're going
Right.
to impact that economy.
So the 19th, I'll move that we continue this to the 19th and allow staff time to pull some stats together for us as well and push it on social media and other areas.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any further discussions? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion moved to the 19th.
The number, if I can say, I've received 2 text messages. Actually, that's the only text I've sent tonight, Chairman, to ask the question. It's roughly around 30 to 40 max. The last probably 4 to 5 years.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, moving on to the item D, next item. What, I'm sorry? Okay. Item D, consideration of resolution amending June 1st, 2015 policy regulating alcohol use at Knott's Island Ruthin Park, Currituck County Rural Center, Soundside Park, and Historic Corolla Park, removing requirement for law enforcement present at private events held at Historic Park. And I believe our county attorney has this one again.
Yes, in 2015, the board adopted, amended the ordinance to allow for the use of alcohol at certain county properties if they comply with rules and regulations adopted by the Board of Commissioners. On June 1st, 2015, the Board of Commissioners adopted those rules and regulations, which were attached as Exhibit A to the agenda. What is to be amended, and this was brought forward from the Travel and Tourism Department as well, is that at least with regard to Historic Corolla Park private events, there's been the ongoing requirement since 2015 that a private event retain a law enforcement officer by the event planner, and the law enforcement officer must be at the event from the beginning to closing. I guess their experience has been that seems to have now become an unnecessary requirement. I've spoken with the sheriff about it. He does not object to a modification of the policy in as much as their station is right across from the county property, essentially there in Corolla, and if there is a need for a law enforcement response at a private event where alcohol is being served on county property, they could certainly be able to respond to that in a timely manner.
Number one, part of the purpose of law enforcement is typically as a deterrent, right? It helps people behave. And this is another one of those. It must be working because we haven't had any issues. So then I just question.
Do we need police at a wedding?
I'm sorry?
This is, we have sheriff's deputies at a wedding. The reception for a wedding. That's what we're really talking about here. That's what these private parties are.
I think, to my knowledge, probably in the last decade, one altercation maybe, but it wasn't nothing physical.
Right.
So I mean, they're not.
I mean, would you want them traipsing around your wedding or your daughter's wedding or one of your
they would have been a real appreciative,
right?
Actually,
but that's what we're talking about here. It's really
that discussion with kids a couple of days ago.
Mm-hmm. Well, any private function. So if they have yeah, but really, it's weddings. That's we're seeing this. That's our biggest.
And it's designated to the.
It covers a wide variety, but the reality is it's a lot of weddings going on. That's at the parks, for instance.
Any questions from the board?
I do have one thing though. Do we need to add our new park to any of this yet, or while we're dealing with it? Shingle Landing.
Well, I'll ask the county attorney. I think this only applies to Historic Corolla Park.
It's not Rural Center, Soundside Park.
Well, no, the amendment, though, will only apply to no longer require a law enforcement officer, will only apply to Historic Corolla Park.
Okay, sorry, I misread that.
There will still be the requirement for a law enforcement officer at the other parks that are provided for in the
And can we just make a correction? instead of Sound Side Park, call it Sound Park. That's what the sign calls it.
Okay, well,
That's just a
this came from the 2015 language, but maybe we've,
Sound Park.
somewhere we've got the name different. I don't know.
Were they allowed to have alcohol? I mean, I know we didn't have
Okay.
the Peach Festival last year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they did. They got a permit for.
I still remember. Oh yeah, I do remember it being there.
Okay.
Never mind.
And
In
they have
19.
Maybe.
All right.
Any other further discussions or comments on this? Okay, if none, can I ask the board for some action?
I'm going to move to approve, sir.
Motion and a second from Mr. Jarvis. Any other questions, comments? I'm sorry.
Etheridge
It was,
second.
I'm sorry,
Kitty.
I thought. Okay, Commissioner Kitty was the second. It was a quiet second, so I just. Yes. All in favor, signify by aye. All opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Next item, item E. Consideration of resolution directing the use of eminent domain to acquire easements necessary for construction of stormwater drainage and management system to alleviate stormwater and flooding issues in Ocean Sands subdivision. I believe Attorney Cree has this one as well.
Yes, Mr. Chairman,
It's the Ike McCree Show.
from what I know, this is only the third time in 32 years that this Board of Commissioners will have entertained the idea of exercising its power of eminent domain. Those two other times were in the early 90s when the county condemned a piece of property at Newtown Road for a community development block grant project to help a community there with the failing septic and wastewater systems. The second time when the county added a protective area to the airport, and now being faced with a chronic flooding problem in Ocean Sands subdivision, and without the ability for the county to go forward with a project to cure that ongoing problem, you have now directed that this be brought to you for your consideration to authorize and direct that eminent domain proceedings begin relative to the taking of an easement within all the open space area within Ocean Sands as delineated within the sections as delineated within the resolution, and in addition, an area for a multi-use path along Section T from its south to the north, adjacent to North Carolina Highway 12, in order to finish up that area of that much-needed safety project. The important aspect with regard to taking an easement within these open space areas in Ocean Sands is that the open space area has already been conveyed to the county with an easement to install water and sewer infrastructure. And that occurred from the developer, Coastland Corporation and James Johnson, in 1987. Unfortunately, the definition of utilities in the settlement agreement entered into at that time between the county and Mr. Johnson and Coastland Corporation did not include or view the necessity, I guess, of stormwater being a requirement that would need to be implemented to cure problems within Ocean Sands. After many years of requests to Mr. Johnson and the Coastland Corporation to please give the county an easement to do that which it's already able to do in open space, and open space which can be used for nothing else, but basically now the county's utility infrastructure, please give us an easement. He's refused to do so. It's now brought it to the point that in order to cure this ongoing problem and situation that shouldn't have to continue much longer, or the people there have to experience it much longer, the need for the county to now to move forward and take this extreme step in order to put into place stormwater infrastructure and drainage system, which, as I've been told by the county engineer, or suspect it will be much like the system that the good people in Wellhead subdivision have enjoyed for some time now to cure their previous flooding issues and problems. Again, Mr. Johnson and Coastal Corporation have refused to convey an easement to the county, despite the fact, and oddly enough, that Section G, which is one of the last developed pieces of Ocean Sands subdivision, is one of the worst flooding places within Ocean Sands. And so he continues to deny a conveyance of an easement to the county and basically to the people within the subdivision who brought property from him, a solution that would make his property more valuable and allow for more developable area on his remaining parcels. And so this is now the first step in moving forward to resolving this important issue in Ocean Sands, and it is before you to, by resolution, to authorize and direct county attorney, me, and other appropriate county officials to move forward with the institution of eminent domain proceedings.
Okay, does the board have any questions for the county attorney?
Do not.
Okay, then I'll ask the board for some action on this thing.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
if I could say,
Yes, sir.
the county has debated and discussed taking this extreme step for, I'm sorry to say, bordering on too long. It's taken us too long to get to this point. I have toured, and I know, Bob, you have as well, Ocean Sands following significant rain, such as a hurricane. You have folks that have never experienced that kind of water before.
How many inches do they usually see?
Well, it varies, but I have seen people whose cars
Yeah.
were flooded out and died in the driveway. They are sitting underneath their carport without electricity. Our four-wheel drive ambulances come down from Corova and patrol the neighborhoods just to make sure everyone's okay. And for us to get to this point, we do not look at taking this action lightly. It is just being a common courtesy and having some compassion for those that have to live under those circumstances or rent houses under those circumstances. It's just horrible.
It is.
It's just horrible.
Well said. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments, questions from the board? I'll ask Ben for a,
Mr. Chairman, I'll move to approve this resolution.
And I second it.
okay, we have a motion second. Any further discussion on this? Then all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, we're going to move forward with that. The next item is item F, board appointments. We have some planning board appointments. I think Commissioner White is going to address that.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to nominate, with the board's pleasure, a slate of people. I have a new nominee, Tom Hurley, to go on the planning board, and we have some reappointments, three of those. Commissioner Jarvis has Gary Owens, Commissioner Beaumont has Brian Bass, and Commissioner McCord has Shay Balance.
Thank you, Mr. White. Any questions on the nominations?
Second.
Okay, first, all in favor of it?
Aye.
All opposed? Carries, thank you. Next item is item G, the consent agenda. A motion for approval.
Move for approval.
Second. And a motion second for Commissioner Etheridge. Any questions? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And at this time, we will take a recess from the regular meeting and move into a special meeting of the Tourism Development Authority, TDA budget amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to run through all of these budget amendments and would ask you all to vote them in as a slate. The first budget amendment is to increase appropriations to replace the roof on the historic boathouse and replace a backflow valve and to remove the finger piers in the basin. Finger piers, if you remember last summer, were damaged to the point that they were unsafe. We're going to go ahead and take them out. We're going to install new piers at a later date, but we've got to get through a CAMA permitting process in order to do that. The second budget amendment is just to transfer budgeted funds for operations. We've got lines that have more than it needs and some lines that we need some extra money in. So that's the second budget amendment. The third budget amendment is to transfer funds to Governmental Construction Fund for the design to repair and replace the siding on the historic Jarvisburg Colored School. The project that was done many years ago, the siding is trapping moisture behind it, and so we need to do some major renovations to the exterior of that school. So the first step is going to be to design work. We're going to hopefully contract, well, not hopefully, we're going to contract with someone who is an expert in historical renovations to give us guidance on how to do that appropriately so that we can not have to do it again in the near future. be happy to answer any questions folks have about those budget amendments.
Any questions from the board? Okay, then I need a.
Move to
motion.
approve.
I have a first and a second. Any further discussions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. At this time,
I'll move to
I'll go ahead and
adjourn.
move to adjourn the TDA and reconvene.
We got to adjourn out of the TDA.
I don't think we have to, if we move into, we don't have to adjourn from the TDA yet motion for adjournment.
Yeah, yes, if you complete with your Tourism Development Authority business, I would suggest you have a motion to recess
We're
that.
adjourning the TDA meeting.
Or
and
to
then you'll
adjourn.
Right, so I'll move to adjourn the TDA meeting. He seconded.
Seconded, okay, went
Sorry,
fast.
I got ahead of you there.
That's, okay. Okay, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, motion carries. At this time, I'll move, we go into closed session and pursuant to GS 143-318.11A6 to discuss personnel matters, and we'll take a few minutes to let the room clear out.